Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm very excited to welcome you, class of 2024, families and students, to our financial aid night. Once again, we have a wonderful presenter that's going to tell you a lot of information about financial aid. Obviously, there's no test on this at the end of the presentation, and we will share this recording with the families after it's done. It is being recorded. We'll answer your questions at the end of the session as much as we can, obviously, but we do have a wonderful team of counselors that can help you with any questions. Obviously, we are getting as much information as we can with the FAFSA not being released yet, but we have Mr. Rogers from Molloy University here, who's going to share, his expertise. He's been doing this a long time, so we're very grateful for him being here. So with that, we want to welcome Mr. Rogers. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for taking the time out. Thanks for the folks at Great Neck and inviting me. So I'll be kind of sharing my screen in a moment with a PowerPoint there. And just to sort of echo, I think on the first slide is my email address. So we'll certainly be taking questions at the end. But I did want to mention, if there is a question that we maybe don't get to, feel free to, email me directly. If your son or daughter is looking at Molloy, ideal, but certainly not necessary. I'll answer every question that I can. So just before I kind of share the screen here, just a quick minute on myself. Been at Molloy since 2006, all financial aid. Prior to that, I did spend a couple of years down in Nashville at Vanderbilt University, and then prior to that, a few years at NYIT on Long Island. As there is a lot of consistencies with the financial aid process, there are some differences depending on the institution. More pricier institutions may have more financial aid dollars. So I think at the end of my presentation, you may have some kind of tips on understanding how each institution awards and how there could be some differences. So did want to share that before we get going. So let me pull my presentation up and we will get going here. So as I mentioned, here's my email address on the screen there, erogers@molloy.edu. So feel free to take it and hit me with an email when you need to. Sounds good. All right, so 30 seconds on Molloy, located in Rockville Center. A lot of growth. I mentioned I started 06. We had under 2,000 students. We are almost at 5,600. Education, nursing majors located in Rockville Center. We opened dorms 10, 12 years ago, 2 new academic buildings, Division II sports. So a lot of growth. It's been great for me. And hopefully maybe some of your children are possibly looking at Molloy. A lot of my presentation uses some examples tied to Molloy, since obviously I'm there. But for the most part, my presentation is generic financial aid 101. So with that, let's get into it. So I'll start with some financial aid terms. So this is sort of financial aid lingo, sort of like a game show that never aired. I'll start with terms. So the big terms you'll hear when you start receiving financial aid offers are gift aid and self-help aid. Self-help aid. Gift aid is the good stuff. That means grants, scholarships, money that you don't have to pay back. And then self-help is loans, employment opportunities. The student has some skin in the game a little bit. So understanding those two as you kind of get into this time period, good place to start, gift aid, self-help. I like to begin also with this little pie chart that tells you where aid is coming from. The biggest form of federal aid has been loans, and that has not changed for years and years. But the next biggest piece of the pie there is the college aid themselves. So the money from the colleges, that makes up the second biggest piece. The rest, federal grants, state grants, but knowing that the institution really is going to have certainly the biggest form of grant dollars available that your son or daughter could access. And hopefully by the end of tonight, you'll have some ideas of sort of getting yourselves at the front of the line to put yourself in the best position for those dollars. So using a statistic from Malloy, and I get questions from parents, from families that ask, should they file? So I have 3 reasons why I always encourage filing for financial aid. First one is it's a free form. Doesn't cost anything. Second one is many institutions across the country require FAFSA, even if your son or daughter doesn't qualify for the traditional aid, federal, state, but just to receive some merit scholarship. It's not part of the decision-making, but it sort of gets the student into the system. This is a question for the institution, but for the most part, and obviously I talk to my colleagues, they all require FAFSA, at least for year 1. So certainly for that reason. And then the last, where I share these numbers from Malloy, and for those that don't know, Malloy's tuition is about $36,000. Our average freshman last year were receiving a financial aid package in excess of over $28,000, and over 18 is grant money. So the takeaway here is not to sort of focus in on that sticker price, but the net price, what's actually coming out of mom and dad's pocket to pay for year 1 at college for your son or daughter. So our average freshmen are obviously not paying that, less than half. So there's a great tool that you can use. And here's my illustration. You want to file because you might not, you just don't know. But there's a great tool across every college across the country called the Net Price Calculator. The Net Price Calculator is on the financial aid site of all the colleges across the country. It's required, it's Department of Ed requirement. And it allows families to plug in some information about the family's finances, along with the student's academic information. It doesn't go deep, but enough where once you plug in this information, it will kick out a ballpark estimate of what the financial aid offer might be. I use it as sort of, if you have a checklist, your son and daughter is looking at 15, 16, 18 colleges, you want to go through them, do the net price calculator at each institution and see what may present, may pleasantly surprise. Hey, this looks like, this is going to work out, affordable, and then check it off. And that's a college your son or daughter may actually fill out an application for admissions. On the other hand, if you do the numbers and this doesn't look great based on net price calculator, doesn't look ideal, you can still apply, but you have a good sense that, hey, the dollars and cents, it's, you know what you're kind of going to be expecting. You get across those off, but it's a good sort of tool to sort of narrow the field. All right. So for the next probably 30 minutes, I'm going to be talking about FAFSA. Contrary to what my slide says, it does not stand for the free application for stress and anxiety. We know it brings it on. Certainly first timers going through this. I get it for sure. And I'm hoping that I will, eliminate some of that anxiety, at least at the end of this evening. All right, to do the FAFSA, you do have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident to actually complete the form. So that must be, that's necessary in order to fill the form out. So kind of going into it, what does it really stand for? It stands for the free application for federal student aid. It is a yearly application. You do the FAFSA for year 1 for freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Each year, life changes. People make more money, less money. Family sizes goes up and down. You do the FAFSA each and every year. So as you might have heard, and this is the big news, is FAFSA is gone through, or it's about to, or currently going through this radical change. I've been doing this for a few decades now, and this is the biggest changes I've ever seen. They are calling the process FAFSA simplification. Once it kind of lands, I'll let you know if I agree with it. But it is certainly the things that, and I'll share these momentarily, that we feel it's going to be a positive thing. It's going to save time, certainly save steps down the road for families. So we're, knocking on wood that this proves to be a good thing. But the big news is FAFSA for the last 8 or 9 years has launched every October 1. That has been the launch date really since 2014, I think. It is now delayed, and it has been delayed till sometime in December. As of about a week and a half ago, they did share with us that FAFSA is actually coming out New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve is when FAFSA 24-25 will launch. Now, as my slide says, I would stay far away from the FAFSA website on New Year's Eve. I actually think it might get overrun, so forth. My suggestion is, give it a few days, and then that's when you can kind of start the process. But delayed, we're certainly hoping things go back for year 25-26, back to the October 1 date, as it has been, and that is our expectation. But it is launching New Year's Eve. We certainly have better things to do than do that then, but a few days later, that's when you can begin. So, as I mentioned, a lot of changes. So a lot of changes. Now, I know many of you are probably going through this process for the first time. So, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the differences since it's the first time you're going to be seeing this, but there are some things that I did want to kind of highlight, at least for a couple of slides. The first one is selective service. There was a question on that. Students had to answer that, no more. They've eliminated that. We like that. And they've also eliminated questions tied to drug conviction. So those two are off the table. Focusing in on what I feel are positive changes. The big one right at the top is less questions, down from over 100 to 36. So we love that. Also, the student's ability to add up to 20 colleges on the FAFSA. So what that means, if your son or daughter has up to 20 colleges that he is thinking about applying to, he can list them upon the initial submission to FAFSA, and that information will route to all the different colleges. It used to be 10, so now 20 is a pretty robust number there. So that will eliminate having to sort of go back in and add more. If you did have, let's say, 25, you would have to submit the 20, wait 3 to 5 days, go back in and submit the other 5. Fewer questions about untaxed income. I have a few slides later on about that. Good news, less information you have to tell them. That's good. We like that. Larger Pell Grants. Pell is the big federal grant program out there. Right now, the maximum Pell Grant's over 7,000. We're hearing numbers as high as 8,500. So this would certainly benefit high-need students, high-need families. So anything that will help them out, we are a fan of. Last thing, child support counts as an asset, not income. So families that are divorced, separated, issues like that, and I'll have plenty of information to speak on that subject in a second. Now, things that I feel aren't, all that terrific. In the past, if families had a couple of kids attending college at the same time, that was a big benefit. It definitely benefited financial aid eligibility, increased it quite often. At this point, we're not expecting the change to be so profound. It will still be asked about and so forth. We just are not expecting a profound change. They will ask questions about all small businesses. In the past, it used to be if a business employed more than 100 people, they asked about it. Now they want to know just if you have a small company, 2-3 people, they want to know all that. And whose information goes on FAFSA in cases of divorce, separation. I have some slides as we move forward. And the later launch, now we know December 31st, new FAFSA. All right, so you can't do FAFSA yet until New Year's Eve. But something you can do is you can create the username password that FAFSA needs for the student to log in. So just like online banking, Netflix, anything through a website, you have to create this login. So they call it the FSA ID. Student needs to create an FSA ID. Parent needs to create an FSA ID. If we have traditional household, mom and dad and the student at home, the student creates an FSA ID, mom creates an FSA ID, and dad creates an FSA ID. These are, in terms of the student, it's going to allow the student to log into FAFSA and kind of get things going. On the parent side, the parent will be able to log in with that information once their child actually invites them into their FAFSA. So that's kind of a new mechanism. So if we have parents that have gone through it in the past, your son or daughter will actually invite you into their FAFSA, and then you will need the FSA ID credentials to provide that information. But this is something you could do now, and I certainly encourage it. You create the FSA ID. Sometimes it takes a day or two to activate, so you don't want to wait until you're just about to do the form. Get that set up. Go to the FAFSA website, FAFSA.gov, FAFSA, which is on the slide, .gov. Create that FSA ID. If we have parents that have gone through this process for older children and you already have an FSA ID, you don't need to create a new one. That one is still good. But mom, dad, student needs to create those. Make sure they're lined up with their own email addresses. I see sometimes parents sets up an FSA ID, they're using the kid's email or vice versa. That's not going to work. So student creates theirs with their own email address, mom creates hers with her, and dad vice versa. If we have birth parents separated, divorced, at this point, I am recommending both parents, regardless, create the FSA ID and just have it. It may not be necessary for both, but it's just better to be at the ready. All right. The terms in the past, they would ask the parents who completed the section. They are now calling parent contributor to the FAFSA. So there's just a little term change. So parent, when you get into it, it's just you're going to be referred to as the contributor to your son or daughter's FAFSA. As I mentioned on my slide here, obviously student, parent, other parent. If the parent is remarried, could be step parent. If the student's married, obviously a spouse. If we have independent students, obviously not this audience, but everyone should have one. All right, just a screenshot of the invitation sort of screen. So students will be inviting their parents or contributors to fill out their section. All right, so once we get to that point of filling out the form, I encourage everyone to take their time, make sure that they get their name, social security number, and date of birth correct. You do not want to get any of that information wrong. That takes, weeks, if not months, for us to correct this data in many cases. So whatever the student's name is on a social security card, that's the name he should use on FAFSA, date of birth, social security. You get that information right, you're in good shape. So other things that you're going to need for FAFSA, as I mentioned, the tax year is 22. I may not have mentioned that, but it is 22. Now here we are almost at the end of 23, but no one's has filed 23 taxes, and we're not going till probably February or March. So the 22 taxes is the most recent that's going to be available when FAFSA does eventually launch. So 22 tax information. Also records of untaxed income, much less this year, but that's good. Current bank statements, business and farm records, stocks, bonds, other investments. Now, regarding the other information, not the tax year, those questions are answered as day you file the form. So they're going to ask a question, hey, what's in parents' checking account? So the day you file the form, that's the information it should be. Look at your checking account balance. That's the number, savings. Now, a little tip, I would say, don't do FAFSA on payday when everyone's checking account looks good. Wait till you pay your bills, then fill out FAFSA. So little things that, can kind of help you navigate that process and make things a little better for you. All right. School deadlines. So I could have substituted every New York team, by the way, Mets, Jets, Knicks. Well, not the Knicks are doing okay, but Giants, not having a great year. But don't drop the ball like they have, at least the Mets this past season. And what I mean by that is school deadlines. Every college across the country has their own deadline when they want FAFSA. So now with the late launch this year, a little different with things are certainly moved back, but you want to check on the websites of those colleges and see when they want that information and make sure you get it to them. So if they're saying February 1, you're going to get the FAFSA done, once it launches, get that information to them. And what that does is it really kind of puts you in the beginning of that awarding packaging process, where if there could be funds that run out, limited pool of dollars, institutional money, federal money, they run out. In some cases, you want to put yourself in the beginning to make sure that you get full consideration for those dollars. So don't drop the ball, you'll be in good shape. All right, so other things that FAFSA, or what kind of drives the bus in terms of what they look at. So number one is income. Number two, savings, investments, real estate, and household size. So I'll touch on investments. They will ask questions about stocks, bonds, things like that, but they do not ask questions about traditional retirement accounts. So things like 401ks, 403bs. Off the FAFSA, don't ask you about it. So good asset protection. Real estate, they do not ask questions about your primary home. Now, if you do have a vacation home or other real estate, yes, but not your primary resident. So another good asset protection. And the last thing they'll ask questions: who lives under the roof? Mom and dad. Is there other older siblings and so forth? Do we have grandparents that reside? Bigger the household size, more likelihood of increased aid eligibility. Not always, but certainly the larger the household, it could help. Digging into sort of parents' assets. So they look at the income, and when FAFSA eventually gets submitted, they crunch all those numbers up and they kick out a dollar amount that represents what the family, or at least the view of FAFSA, what the family could afford. Now, whether it's true or not, sort of kind of a moot point, but it's a number that financial aid offices have to work with. So when you submit that form, you'll get that index number, and they are calling it the student aid index. It used to be called the expected family contribution. They're coming up with more of a generic word for it, but it's really representing the same thing. So the statistics that I see here, or view here, are really aware of where this is coming from. So they look at income, they take somewhere between 24, upper 47% there, and impute that into that formula. On the asset side, it's 5.64. So certainly income heavy on this. FAFSA just recently launched an estimator so families can get a sense of what that SAI may be. You'll plug in information about your finances, and it's a great tool, similar to Net Price Calculator, but you get to know what that SAI. So when you see that number, you're going to say, all right, this is what FAFSA is going to feel I can afford. And then when we get into sort of understanding need-based eligibility, it will make a little more sense. All right. As I mentioned, all retirement accounts don't count on FAFSA. Also, your yearly contribution, which used to, now is omitted. So even that yearly contribution that you make is now off the table. So anything in that account is going to be not counted on FAFSA. So good stuff there. For low-income families, adjusted gross income of over 60,000 or under 60,000, they will not ask questions about assets at all. So that leads to sort of another tip. If you're going through FAFSA and they give you an option to leave something out, they may say, would you like to include this? You simply say no. You do not have to volunteer information on that. So if they don't require it, don't list it. All right, 529 plans. Those always count as a parent's asset, even if it's in the child's name. If it's another relative, doesn't count. The 529s always counts as a parent's asset, which is going to weigh less heavy than on the student side. Just a couple of things on this slide. What counts, what doesn't. I mentioned all the traditional retirement accounts off the table, don't count. Personal possessions, life insurance policies, all that stuff. And this is right on the FAFSA form. When you're going through this, it's going to be there for you to look at too. So don't be, oh, I have to remember this, I have to remember that. No, they're going to let you know. On the count side, sometimes it's a little bit of a surprise. Trust funds do count. So that's something to be aware of. Going to get back to that one. All right, independence. So students are automatically determined by FAFSA who is considered dependent or independent on FAFSA. I may get upperclassmen come visit me, juniors and seniors, and they'll walk into my office and they're like, Gene, I want to be considered independent for FAFSA because, I just moved out of my parents' house. I'm living with some, friends now. So I'm on my own. I'm independent. So in real life, that certainly makes sense. But for FAFSA purposes, they have really 4 questions that determine independence. Those 4 questions are, is the student 24 or older? Is the student a veteran of the armed forces? Is the student married? Does the student have children they support? If any of those questions are yes, then FAFSA considers them independent. We don't need parent information on FAFSA at all. But if all of them are no, then we do need parental information on the form. Now, there could be an exceptional circumstance if the student, doesn't live with parents, doesn't even know where they are. There's some, dangerous stuff out there, and et cetera, et cetera. But if the student finds themselves in a bit of a unique circumstance, new to FAFSA this year, they can self-report that on the FAFSA form and indicate that they are unable to provide parental information because of a unique circumstance. So if they check that box, that information will route to the college, and then the college will sort of reach out and try to get more clarification on what the student is facing. Since this is new this year, how that communication may work, we really just don't know how it will all, end up. My suggestion to students that are in that situation to also connect with the financial aid office at the colleges they're looking at and share that with them to say, hey, this is what I did. What can I expect? But understanding that for the most part, if you don't meet any of those 4 definitions, parents would need to complete that information. What if the parent just refuses to provide? It does tie the hands of the financial aid office, and we can't really do what we want to do. We can award a student loan, but not the full financial aid. To the extent they are able, parents have primary responsibility to pay for their dependent children's education. That comes right from FAFSA. If you reread that sentence, it doesn't say anything about willingness. They are not measuring whether mom and dad wants to help their son or daughter. They're just going to measure their ability to. Students also have responsibility. And then the third bullet, families should be evaluated in their present financial condition. One of the most important things I'll probably say tonight, what this really means is financial aid offices want to award based on what's going on currently with the family. Now, because FAFSA is going to be asking questions about 22 taxes, because it is the most recent information at this point, something could change. You may submit FAFSA, son or daughter may start receiving financial aid offers in January, February, and then God forbid, mom or dad comes home in March sometime and says, hey, my company went under or something. So now all the financial aid or financial information in the family is really different. Now income's changed. If maybe mom or dad took a new job, working less hours. So the financial aid office, as I mentioned, wants to award based on what's kind of happening now. But there's no area on FAFSA that allows a family to sort of go in and erase things or tweak things. So what families need to do is they need to reach out directly to the colleges involved and let them know. So every college across the country has something called special circumstance appeal. And what that means is if something radically changed in the household, obviously a job loss, job change, where now the income is much different, this is some information we want to know about. So the family reaches out, we say, sure, give us copies of, last pay stubs, give us a letter of explanation, and then we will be able to sort of revise the financial aid offer based on those new conditions. And we want to do it. We want to do it if we know about it. So certainly something to be mindful of. Other things that we can look at: medical expenses not covered by insurance, unusual dependent care expenses, one-time occurrence. So maybe if the family inherited some money one year, and that was the year they filled out FAFSA, that would be something if you share this with the school, say, hey, you know, our adjusted gross income looked really good this year because we inherited this. That would be something the college can sort of look at and say, hey, all right, give us the last two, the last 2 tax years, and we'll reeval and average that and award based on that. But only if they know about it. They got to write the letter, email, let them know. Now, this year is so different with the late launch. I would encourage maybe getting out ahead of it a little bit after FAFSA has been submitted. You can kind of reach out to those colleges that your son or daughter really kind of maybe narrow the field down and let them know, hey, there's been a big change, more recently. What can we do? What's the process? And let them know. And the last thing, natural disaster. Obviously, I've been doing this a long time. I remember the Sandy storm from 2012. People lose houses and stuff. This is something that we want to, we want to update if we can. All right. So when you get to do FAFSA, when you get to that point, they'll be asking the questions about the tax year information. So over the last 8-9 years, FAFSA has implemented a opportunity for the family to automatically link tax information right to FAFSA. They call it data retrieval tool. Push a few buttons, this information automatically connects from IRS into the FAFSA form. They pull the adjusted gross income, they pull the tax pay, they pull all the relevant information they need, they populate it into FAFSA, and it gets submitted. It has been terrific. It has been a terrific tool. It has cut down on families having to send copies of tax returns to colleges. It's cut down on, mistakes, transposing numbers and so forth. So it's been an ideal tool that we've been a big fan of since it was implemented. I think it was 2016 or so. Starting this year, they are now making it required. It used to be a voluntary thing. Now they are requiring families to automatically link information right from IRS. So you're not going to have a choice anymore. There may be an instance where you may not be able to, because if you filed an amended return, or if parents are divorced and separated or filed separately, there could be instances where it doesn't work. And if that's the case, then you'll be able to manually supply the information. But it is now required. We do expect it to be as good as it always has been. So we're a big fan of it. It's cut down on paperwork. It's cut down on students having to, fill out extra forms. It's just cut down on a lot of things that saves financial aid officers time, saves parents and families time. This is just the launch screen of that link that you'll have to provide. And the student will also have to do it as well. Even if the student did not file a tax return, they will need consent to verify with IRS that they did not file. Okay, a little math for the evening. So I kind of mentioned a few slides ago, based on when FAFSA kind of crunches the numbers and kicks out that dollar amount, that SAI number. So this is kind of where it kind of all figures out. So financial need is determined by this formula. Cost of attendance minus SAI equals financial need. So you're going to hear types of financial aid is considered need-based, which is this formula. So I'll explain the formula to you. Cost of attendance, which is on the left, that is tuition and fees. Tuition and fees is a direct cost from the institution. So I'll use Molloy, 36. Books and supplies. Now, depending on the major, the student could be a, nursing major, math major, could be $500, could be $1,000. So every college has to sort of plug in a average amount, and we may plug in 800. Room and board. If the student's living on campus, it's a direct cost to the institution. But if the student's living at home with mom and dad, we have to assign a value to that and plug it in. We may say $3,000, $4,000. Transportation, same thing. Student needs a car, needs to get back and forth. We have to assign a value to that, maybe 5,000, whatever. Then miscellaneous expenses, student needs clothes, other things. So we have to assign a value. So every college across the country has to come up with this overall cost of attendance, which some of it is a direct cost, it's a billable cost, but many of the things are not. They're costs that you need for your son or daughter to attend college. Needs the car, gas money, but you're sort of paying that during the course of the year. But that cost of attendance is a number that allows us to create an award. So we take that number, whatever it is, for Molloy's about 52, 53,000. We subtract the SAI, whatever that number is. So easy math, maybe we say it's 20. And then we subtract it, we're left with 32. So 52 minus the 20, 32. So in this case, that student would be eligible for up to $32,000 in need-based aid. So I have some examples. I have a private institution similar to Molloy, and the cost is 50. SAI is 25. So FAFSA is saying, all right, we feel family can afford 25. Whether it's true or not, you got to just take it. Remaining need of 25,000. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you, we got student Anthony. Anthony is a bright student. He applies to this school and he gets a $10,000 merit scholarship. Merit scholarships are not need-based, but they fill the need. He's also an athlete, plays baseball, he's a pitcher, and he's getting a $10,000 athletic scholarship. Once again, the athletic scholarship is not need-based, but it fills the need. So we take those two scholarships, 20,000, we bring it into that remaining need amount, we subtract that, we're left with 5. So it fills the need, even though it's not need-based, but we're left with $5,000. Now the institution can jump in and offer a need-based grant up to that $5,000 to bridge the gap to fill the need completely. They could also award a need-based loan, a subsidized loan, or a work-study opportunity. So different things depending on the institution. Now, on the other side of the slide here, I mentioned like a SUNY. Cost is much less. Same student, same SAI. Student could still get the merit money, still get the baseball scholarship, and not need-based, comes in, but there's nothing left to subtract. So the student would not be eligible for any need-based dollars just based on the formula. All right. So whose information goes on FAFSA? So this is probably the biggest change thing kind of with FAFSA, and I'm going to spend a little bit on this. So we got traditional household, we got mom and dad and the student. Mom and dad and the student, that's whose information goes on FAFSA, nice and easy. Scenario 2, student lives with mom, mom is divorced from birth father. In the past, just to highlight that, FAFSA was always interested in where the student lives in cases of divorce separation. Now they have changed it, and they are telling families that they are interested in whichever parent provides the most support to the child will be parent of record for FAFSA. So it is not where the student's living, at least by definition, but which parent provides the most support to the child. So 9 times out of 10, if student's living with mom, mom's probably providing all the support, it's mom. But in terms of the description of what FAFSA is looking for, it's whichever parent provides the most support. So I have a little kind of pie chart here. We got parents married to each other. Yes, it's both. Parents live together, both. If they don't, which parent provides more financial support in the last 12 months? If it's one parent, the other. Now, in this case, obviously, if the parents remarried, they have to provide step-parents information. Certainly that's something to consider. I got like an example here. If dad pays $10,000 in child support towards the child, if the $10,000 is more than half support, then dad is parent of record on FAFSA. If mom is remarried, no income from mom or step-parent. I switch it around and say, even if dad's given mom $10,000, mom still says, hey, wait a second, I'm still providing more than half support then mom would be parent of record, but then stepdad's information would be needed. So understanding that is key. Now, this comes right from the Department of Education, and I did want to kind of share this, especially for this year. This is brand new. So colleges across the country are really concerned about sort of checking this information out, how, we're going to, really police this. So this is right from the Department of Education. If you kind of read through it, for divorced or separated parents, income and assets are reported for the parent who provides the most financial support over the 12 months prior to filing the FAFSA, even if the student does not live with that parent. Parent of record is self-reported on FAFSA, and unless there is conflicting information, there is no requirement for the school to verify or otherwise confirm which parent provides the greater portion of support, or is if the correct parent is reported. So it is sort of kind of giving colleges a little bit of sort of a sigh of relief that we're not going to be digging too deep on this information, because how we would do that remains to be seen. So self-reported, that is what FAFSA is telling us. Who is parent on FAFSA? Biological parent, adoptive parent, step parent who resides. Who is not? Grandparent. Plenty of students come in, hey, I live with grandparent, I want to put them on the FAFSA. No, 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 no. Only if the grandparent have legally adopted the child are they considered parent. If we do get grandparent information on FAFSA and no, it's grandparent, we have to find out. We have to find out what the story is, reach out to the student, and dig and get that information right. So make sure that information is correct. So I've been talking about FAFSA for the last, 28 minutes there. There is another form, and that other form is called the CSS profile. Now, this form, many of, definitely all the Ivy Leagues out there require it, and the notch below, the Dukes of the world, Villanova, Bucknell, those colleges require it. It digs much deeper than FAFSA does. It asks almost all the questions FAFSA leaves out. But it is required by the colleges that ask for it. So if your son or daughter is looking at a school that requires profile, you got to fill it out. It costs a little bit of money there, $25 for each, first one, $16 for each. But these institutions have a lot of their own money. The only way you're going to get it is if you apply. As I mentioned, they dig deeper. They ask questions about home value. They ask questions about retirement savings. They ask questions about non-custodial parent. But if they want the form, you really don't have a choice in it, unless you just don't want to apply for aid. But you got to fill it out and provide the information. That whole link with IRS, they're going to ask you to provide tax information. All the colleges do it. My suggestion is check on the college's webpage. Do they ask for CSS profile? You got to fill it out. It launched October 1, as FAFSA has every other year. So it is out. It is there, ready to go. So you can get going on profile if the colleges your son or daughter is looking for. So check the websites. Definitely don't fill it out if the college doesn't want it. It's not gonna go anywhere. So only the colleges that require it, but they do dig deep on that. A little timeline on the process. So you complete FAFSA. You get an instant email when it's been submitted, instant, within a minute. You don't get the email, log back into FAFSA, you might have forgot to hit the submit button. Get the email, that information goes out to all the colleges across the country that was listed, up to the 20. Student may not have applied for admissions yet for these schools. Once they have, and once they've been accepted, that's when financial aid offers come out. So that information will route to the students this year, maybe February. That would be probably the earliest will be February. That information will go out. In some instances, he may have to provide documentation, as I mentioned, copies of tax returns, things like that. Certainly you want to provide that information when you can. Want things to kind of slow down. Most colleges will send the information electronically. Some do send hard copy information as well. Molloy does that. So you'll have, different options there, but just the timeline on the process. All right, show me the money. So all these different things are the types of aid that your financial aid office offers will include federal grants, state grants, institutional grants, loans, work study, outside scholarships, private alternative loans. All components of financial aid. When you start receiving your office, hopefully you get more from the top than the bottom. I'll start with scholarships. So the admissions office at the institutions, they're the decision makers on merit scholarships, not the financial aid office. So if your son or daughter is getting a nice scholarship, $10,000, $20,000, and you're like, oh, you should get more. These are admission counselor questions. You check with the admissions office, you know, oh, is he eligible for this? Is he eligible for that? Different institutions, Molloy included, we have scholarships tied to community service, leadership things. So these are things that fall under admissions. Now, if he receives a nice merit-based scholarship, it comes into the financial aid office. We put it through that formula, cost of attendance minus SAI equals remaining need. Is there any remaining need? And then we try to bridge that gap with other things if possible. But the decisions come from admissions, from the different departments, not financial aid. Your son or daughter should be looking at outside resources. There's plenty of websites out there. I mentioned 2 on the slide here, fastweb.com, Sallie Mae. These are search engines for outside scholarships. I'm sure the guidance office at Great Neck there has opportunities and resources as well. Locally, maybe the local library. Maybe you belong to a church group. Maybe you belong to a family heritage group like Knights of Columbus, things like that. Maybe they have a scholarship. Maybe mom or dad works for someplace that has one. So, you know, they may be small scholarships, $250, $500, but by all means, students should be looking at these resources aside from the federal and state aid. Look there, but also be aware that there could be, you know, you could get emails, you could get regular mail that, you know, will kind of taking you for a ride. No reputable organization should charge you any money to apply for a outside scholarship. So if you see anything like that, just delete it, throw it out, move on. All right, federal money. The biggest federal grant out there is Pell. I mentioned in the beginning, larger Pell grants for the upcoming year. We like that. Could be hitting $8,000 come next year. It is a grant, doesn't have to be paid back. We're a big fan. SEOG is another federal grant you could qualify for, but it does come from a limited pool. So I mentioned, you know, my Mets slide here, deadlines. You want to make sure you get that information into colleges when they want it, because funds like SEOG do run out, and you want to be sort of in the front of the line to be considered for it. All right, institutional grants. I mentioned the admissions office, they're the decision makers on merit money. If the student's an athlete, if he plays a musical instrument, maybe the music department, the athletic, the coaches, they're making decisions on those dollars. Once those decisions are made, they cycle to the financial aid office. We run the numbers with that formula, see if there's anything else we can do. If the student's looking at a New York State school, New York State public or private, they should apply for TAP. TAP is the state grant program out there. At the end of FAFSA, you'll get a link that allows you to apply for TAP. If you miss the link, usually you'll get an email that says, oh, we noticed you're a New York State resident, please apply for TAP. But it is a completely separate application after you do FAFSA that you should apply for. Everyone qualifies for federal loans via FAFSA, but they do limit these loans. So if a student, a first-year student, is going to ABC college and so forth, he will or she will be eligible for a federal loan up to $5,500 for year one. And these loans have been around for a while. They used to be called Stafford, so forth, but they're guaranteed. Student doesn't have to pay them back until they graduate, unless they wanted to. The interest rate is reasonably low. It used to be much lower. Right now it's 5.5. But if the student family is looking to borrow, begin with the federal loans for sure. Every college, if you do FAFSA, will let you know. You may qualify for a subsidized loan, which is need-based, based on that formula, or you may qualify for the unsub. It's going to be one or the other. Certainly the subsidized is a little better. The interest is paid while the student's in school for the amount of the loan. Interest would begin after they graduate. Then they have 10, 20 years to pay these loans back. So definitely a lot of favorable aspects to the federal loan program. If the family's looking to borrow completely, the limits, obviously, with the federal loans for the student, there's something called the Parent Plus loan, which is through the Department of Ed. It allows the family to borrow the entire cost of attendance if they wanted to. There is a slight credit check to that loan. The interest rate's not great, right on the slide there, a little over 8%. But it has it has repayment deferment options for the student, for the family, so you don't have to make payments while in school. They do, in many cases, insist on interest payments. But the colleges will, make this available. Sometimes they don't share it exactly on the financial aid offer. So it may be something you have to ask about, hey, if I want to do a plus loan, what do I do? So you may have to raise that question if you don't see it on the financial aid award. Everything I've mentioned federally, studentaid.gov is really the FAFSA website. So Pell Grants, federal loans, work study. You can dig deep on studentaid.gov and find more information out. Start Here, Get There is a state website, some great videos on college preparedness, not just financial aid, admission stuff, but helpful site to check out. And with that, I think I'm under an hour, so I like to keep it that way. So certainly appreciate, a lot of information. Hopefully I didn't go too fast, but I wanted to get what I could through in the time we had. So ready for questions.
Thank you. We have a few. I
Okay.
answered some that I felt I could answer, but
Okay.
one question is said, if I'm an international student living in the US and attending South High, can I still fill out the FAFSA?
Well, if you're international, it's I presume you're not a permanent resident or you're not a U.S. citizen. So that would preclude you from filing FAFSA and it actually being processed. Now, the institution may suggest that you fill it out just so they can kind of look at the data. So you're not going to qualify for any of the federal aid through FAFSA, but the college, and you could just reach out to the college that you're applying to and basically tell them the story. They may just want to look at your data just to see if there could be some institutional money that they can give out. I mean, we have done that from time to time at Molloy. Certainly, this does not impact merit money. Any merit scholarships, the admissions office, they're not looking at any financial aid information, so you'd be eligible for those.
Thank you. The next question is, if the CSS showed a different SAI than the FAFSA, which one would colleges use to award aid?
Well, going back to my Vanderbilt things, what we would do is we would kind of merge them. They would be merged where we're kind of coming up with a little bit of both as we're formulating. When it comes down to the institutional money, it's going to be completely the profile SAI or the FC because it's their own dollars, and if they're awarding their own money, they're gonna use there, because each institution tailors the methodology of the CSS profile to their liking. So
what if one parent's income is in Europe and does not file tax returns, not a US citizen? Only one parent files taxes.
If both birth parents are married and they're not divorced or separated, then they're going to ask for both parent. If one parent's out of the country, they're going to ask for those numbers to be translated into US dollars. So usually you can find that information, but they will look for those dollars to be translated into US dollars.
Let me see. Is the TAP grant for direct loan plus loan timing the same as the FAFSA loan timing?
TAP is a New York State grant program. That is a New York State program, strictly for New York State residents. It's free money, it's not a loan. And then you mentioned the two loan programs, the direct loan and the plus loan. So the direct loan and the plus loan are tied to FAFSA. You can't apply for either of them or be eligible unless you've done FAFSA. I don't know if that, but that the TAP is sort of independent. You'll get the application after you do the FAFSA, but it's a separate entity there. So
Right. Like one TAP is state aid, whereas the other ones are federal aid. And our colleges can package you if they have all that information.
yes.
So
yeah. The financial aid offers will include everything we know about.
Right.
Yeah.
Does federal aid cover living costs if students were to live off campus? For example, rent.
Well, when you talk about federal aid, that could be a federal loan. So it could be a plus loan by the parent. It could be the federal loan by the student. The Pell Grant, which is the big federal grant. So, I'll give you an example that I know, real life student that ended up transferring to Molloy, but he had spent a couple of years at Nassau Community College, obviously, a cheaper college there. So he was eligible for Max TAP and Max Pell. At the time, they were in excess of about 11,000. His tuition was only 4 or 5. So he was able to use those additional dollars for other things, not necessarily, rent and so forth, but other gas in the car and other things tied to him just being able to get to and from school.
This is a little bit nuanced, so forgive me if you're just like a piggyback.
Okay.
But can you explain a little bit about like first money in or last money in, and certain grants are considered like last money in or first, with, like you mentioned, Pell Grants or some other grants that come in, how they are.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying. I'm just trying to, well, specific to, let's go TAP. Now, TAP
Right.
has to strictly go towards tuition.
Right.
It has to go towards tuition. It can't, Pell can go to other things like books and supplies and, other things. So certainly that can go, beyond that. There's other things, students can possibly receive. There's some, veteran benefits that, kind of go into the formula, but, the two big federal state is the state money has to go towards the tuition only, but federal monies can go, go elsewhere. And then, when you start looking at sort of outside scholarships, I'll get questions on outside scholarships where if the student's receiving a need-based grant from an institution and then says, oh, I just got this $5,000 scholarship from Coca-Cola or so, that institution is going to lessen the need-based grant because that Coca-Cola scholarship now kind of fills, bridges the gap already, and the college is just trying to, they're going to use their money as the very last thing in that process.
Thank you. Does FAFSA ask for mortgage info on the house?
No, because they don't ask any questions about your home. So that asset is completely protected.
Another question is said, the FAFSA release, it's scheduled to be released December 31st. Scheduled,
Yes.
right?
Yes. At 11:50 p.m.
So it perfectly with your New Year's celebration, you can do your FAFSA. But again, like was said previously, it might be a heavy volume that might be trying to do that. So just be mindful of that. Let me see if I have anything else. Does FAFSA consider any TAP money given when determining how much financial aid you qualify for?
I'm not, I'm not understanding that this FAFSA.
No, I feel like, no, TAP is not they're saying if TAP impacts your FAFSA, like your federal money, but
no.
it's not, it's separate money. How are after-tax retirement annuities counted?
Annuities don't, nope.
So
You know what, I will,
yeah,
I just will just add a comment. Now, you know, the FAFSA has not launched yet.
Right.
Our understanding today, December 4th, once FAFSA releases, if, you know, they change anything like last minute, you know, I can only speak for what I'm expecting based on the past. So, you know, either check back with me in January. But yeah, I would be shocked though. So.
Another can I get federal loans if I'm an international student? I think you answered if you're not a citizen or green card holder with you know, you're not going to be able to qualify for federal loans. Scholarships are grants, or somebody asked about the FAFSA and scholarships. Scholarships are usually something that either this institution gives you or you fill out, you know, individual applications. FAFSA offers grants that are federal and then loans. Scholarships are more institutional based or privately based.
Yep.
I think we covered everything on the questions. I'm going to give it a couple of seconds. I do have some information that I'll share with parent. Oh, one more. If a parent of an age, if a parent is of age to collect Social Security but not collecting, does that affect the award amount?
Say, I don't think
If the parent is eligible to collect Social Security but is not collecting Social Security, does that affect the award amount or FAFSA?
No.
Nope. Okay. Any other? I think we covered everything. I do have some things to share with the parents, but I am very grateful for your time, Mr. Rogers. I know you've been doing a lot of night events, sharing information with families, and our families at Great Neck South High are very grateful for your time and your expertise. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Families of Great Neck, I just have a couple of things to share with you. So I want to thank Mr. Rogers, and you are
yes, and
welcome
just
to
keep
leave.
my, you know, if you want to mention my email when you wrap things up, I'm happy to answer other questions that come up. So thanks for the time, and enjoy the rest of the program.
Thank you so much for everything. We appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And for the rest of the families, I do just want to show a couple of things on our website. You know, we covered a lot of information, but we do have some information that is on our website. If you go to Great Neck South High School and then either under quick links, which will give us the website, or departments under web guidance, it will take you to the same place. Under college information, there's a lot of different things, but there's a specific financial aid tab there. If you click on the financial aid tab, it talks a little bit about the FAFSA. It talks about some changes to the FAFSA, when it's going to be released, information on the simplification of the FAFSA, a tutorial, links to the actual FAFSA that will take you to the federal student aid. One of the things that I shared with students and was stated today is, even though it's not released yet, families can get their FSA ID, which is basically your electronic signature to be able to complete the FAFSA. So parents and students need electronic signatures. You are able to get an electronic signature, whether or not, you know, for example, some interesting situations can be, you know, a student is a citizen, has a Social Security number, but maybe one or two parents don't have a Social Security number, or not citizens. They are eligible to get the FSA ID just to be able to sign the FAFSA. So that is something that you can do now. You can get an FSA ID in order to complete the FAFSA. And sometimes it takes a little time to get your FSA ID, maybe like a day or two. So if you do it now, by the time you get into being able to do the FAFSA, you'll be able to have that as well. So we recommend that as well. Again, the CSS profile, that's something separate from the FAFSA and is now available. Every private institution can tell you when their deadlines are. So you want to just check with each institution. There's information on it when you click on it. And it does offer who is the participating schools that actually ask for the CSS profile. Not every school, most New York State public schools do not ask for the CSS profile. It is mainly private institutions that are going to ask for it. And again, there's a tutorial for that as well. One very important Great Neck Student Aid Fund is something that's been longstanding in our community. It is something that is done for students of need. If a student is of need and they would need some support for their first year of college, it's an opportunity for students. Please visit Great Neck Student Aid Fund so that you're able to fill out forms to be able to apply for this great opportunity that is offered for our community students in our community from our community. And again, if you're interested in supporting this organization, that's also something that is available for you. Again, we have a lot of different tools. FastWeb, College Board Net Price Calculator has, in addition, we do offer e-scholarship for students, and all our students have the password for e-scholarship in their counselor's Google Classroom. So just have your students go into their Google Classrooms and they'll see that they'll have access to e-scholarship. This is a service we pay for our students. It lists every scholarship out there, and you can do it by alphabet, but when it's due, you can look up scholarships. So we encourage students to go on this service. Again, you can ask your counselors, but it is on the Google Classroom, your credentials, and be able to have log into this very good service that we offer. Again, everything is here on our website, but please come to us, ask us. And most importantly, as Mr. Rogers said throughout the presentation, if you have any very unique questions, don't hesitate to reach out to the financial aid offices of colleges. They are the experts. They are the ones doing this on a day-to-day basis and can best give you the information that you will need to navigate this. And again, I really appreciate you joining us. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the week and holiday season. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and I hope this was informative. Take care.